dawn of the Cenozoic era with the Paleogene period was the beginning of the Age of the Mammals, leading to the evolution of our own species. It began with the Paleocene epoch.
The sea levels continued to drop, exposing more and more land. Eventually, Vancouver Island was connected to the mainland by deep valleys.
During the Paleocene epoch, Purgatorius was a member of the Mudge community. This plesiadaptiform is the earliest known protoprimate.
The climate was warm and dry during this time.
The warming trend continued into the next epoch, the Eocene.
At that time, the Earth became very hot. The ocean temperature was at least 8 degrees higher than it is today. The whole planet was ice-free.
Smilodectes lived here. This adapiform primate was special because it had thumbs.
Vancouver Island was joined by the final large masses that helped form the shape it is today.
The Pacific Rim terrain collided with the southern end of Vancouver Island about 55 million years ago, followed by the crescent terrain 42 million years ago. These land masses form much of the Greater Victoria area. The impact of these collisions created uplift that increased the elevation of some of the Gulf Islands and formed some new ones.
Toward the end of the Eocene, ice began to form at Earth's poles. This was the beginning of the cooling trend.
Next came the Oligocene epoch. Ekmoechichila was the only adaptiform primate living here at this time. His name means little cat man, and he resembled a lemur.
Grasslands developed on Mudge. Gradually, plants and trees with big leaves moved farther and farther south. Trees like the ones we have today grew. The climate and natural environment became quite close to the way they are now.
The last of the primates disappeared from North America at the end of the Paleogene.
The next ones to arrive would be far more advanced. They would be humans, but they would not get here for another 23 million years.
The Neogene period is next. It is divided into the Miocene and the Pliocene epochs. While best known for primate development in Africa and Europe, the west coast of North America has some pretty awesome features of its own.
Mammal diversity exploded during this time period. Half of all mammal families known today were present at this time. Here on Mudge, the first real horses, dogs, and bears appeared. Almost all modern groups of whales appeared, as well as early seals and walruses. Saber-toothed cats were everywhere. It was the last time that rhinoceroses lived here.
Merychippus was prominent here in the Miocene. This species had a large brain and was highly intelligent. It was the first horse species to evolve a head shape similar to the modern-day horse.
She was the mother to many branches of horses. She was about 3 feet tall at the shoulder. She would have been a perfect little horse for me to ride.
In the Pliocene epoch, sea levels rose to an estimated 22 meters higher than they are today. That was a drastic change from the dried-up seafloors that connected the islands for millions of years prior to this time.
Mudge was still here above water, at least. Some of it was above water. Cam and Elise's house is 82 meters above sea level, after all. But Mudge went back to being an actual island instead of being a lump attached by big valleys to other lumps.
Saber-toothed cats continued to thrive here. Another resident was the ground sloth. Mastodons may have also appeared here for the first time in the Pliocene.
They came long before mammoths. The two species are in the same family, but are actually quite different, like gorillas and humans.
That brings us to the final time period, the Quaternary.
You would think we could wrap this up pretty quickly with only 2.58 million years left to cover, eh? It sounds reasonable, except that something happened about 2.56 million years into the final stretch. People showed up here.
Because we are such an egocentric species, the last little sliver in time, the part that involves us, will need to get a fair bit of attention. But before we get to that, let's do our due diligence with that 2.56 million years Petrea mentioned, beginning with the first 3 ages of the Pleistocene epoch.
This time is often called the Ice Age. Polar ice caps were expanding. This sucked up a lot of the ocean water, so sea levels dropped. Gabriella and Mudge were no longer separated by water. We were also attached to Vancouver Island.
Earth's continents had settled into where they are today. Massive glaciers eventually covered enormous expanses. In some places, these spread as far south as the 40th parallel. That's like Reno, Nevada and Eureka, California. We were covered by the Cordilleran ice sheet.
Mastodons continued to live here, and they were joined by their cousins, the woolly mammoths, and you know what? They were taller than Chad. They were probably the last Munchkin ever who were taller than Chad.
Oh, good. So we can put that one to rest now.
There were places where there were gaps in the ice, especially here, near the coast. And that's where these big animals grazed. A few years ago, the fossilized leg bone of the woolly mammoth was found on Gabriella.
The weight of the glacier compressed the land. It began receding here on the islands and the coast sooner than it did on the mainland. Rainforests began to develop here 20,000 years ago. The melting of the glaciers, combined with the compressed land, meant that sea levels were significantly higher for a brief time. In the Discovery Islands, the San Juan Islands, and the Gulf Islands, what are now single islands, would have been several smaller islands at that time, with only the higher elevations poking up above the ocean.